guys, what's up and welcome to another video on The Complete Woman. We are here again. If this is your first time stopping by, my name is Yemi Abiodun. I am the founder of The Complete Woman and I'll be your host today. So The Complete Woman is an NGO stroke ministry, helps empower women spiritually and physically. When a woman is empowered physically and spiritually, she is the total package. She doesn't do life from a lacking mindset, and as a result, every physical things, from her finances to everything you can see around her relationships, everything that is physical in its totality is high quality, because she's a high quality woman. So we've started with the first foundation of this complete woman, which is emotional maturity, and we titled this playlist The Will of God for Your Heartbreak. Right, so here we are going to be handling every scenario a woman has come in contact with, her heart being broken, either in the home front, relationship, intimacy, society, culture, name it. We are handling everything in this series and how to help her heal. If that sounds like something you would like to be a part of, don't forget to keep yourself up to date to the rest of the videos in this playlist. Just click the playlist, you'll see all the videos. Start with day one and find yourself up onto this place. So the last time we spoke about emotions, what are emotions, how emotions are formed, and we learned a lot about emotions like sadness, happiness are just basic emotions. We learned how emotions can run complex, where you can even be feeling sad and happy at the same time. We learned about jealousy, self-guilt, conscious emotions, how that imposter syndrome, self-sabotage is not just there, they came from emotions. We also saw how emotions are formed in the brain, in the heart. We learned so much, so I advise you go to that video so it can make sense while you watch this one. But today we are talking about emotional traumas. What are emotional traumas? Types of emotional traumas. I've come to realize most of us in this world are working with one or more emotional traumas without realizing it. Why would you say people will be like, for them to level up and come back, they went to therapy? People are working with emotional traumas and wounds and they don't know about it. They don't know. When you hear people preaching and saying heal so you don't bleed on someone else, heal so that you just need to heal. I'm very sure when you're done listening to this video, you'll be shocked about many things that sound like your experiences, and you don't know you're working from a place of trauma, especially from this part of the world. I'm from Nigeria, in Africa. I feel the home front is the biggest baggage for inflicting emotional wounds and traumas on children, on kids that grow up into adulthood without the parents realizing it. Because again, broken parents were once broken children and they grow up and the cycle continues. When you realize certain patterns, why you keep attracting the same partners in the same soul partners in different bodies, you understand these are things caused by emotional trauma. So many things. Emotional trauma can come up to your productivity, when your productivity, because your body is dissociating, your mind is dissociating. You are trying to get your gains, be productive, hit things and do things. You set up all these goals beginning of the year, but before you know anything, you've derailed because self-doubt and so many things, and you don't know you're operating from trauma. It can come very complex, very deep, that you never have good relationships. It's either they destroy or they take advantage of you. No matter how much you give, you may be experiencing trauma without knowing. You're always broke, you don't have money, you have listened to all the level up down and on YouTube, it's not working and all of that. You may be experiencing trauma, you don't even know. So as always, I always come prepared. Get your notes, because we are learning to give you so much value, okay? And you not pay anything for it. So you're going to learn a lot, because every single person, I'm yet to meet anybody that doesn't have one form of trauma they've picked up either from childhood or interpersonal relationship with other people. So if you want to prove me wrong, watch the video to the end. Don't forget to hit the like button so that people that need this video will see it. Comment below. Can't wait. I look forward to engaging with your comment and answering all your questions. And don't forget to subscribe to the channel because you want to make sure you don't want to miss any video. When we are done with emotional maturity, we are entering into spiritual maturity. After spiritual maturity, we are entering into mental wholeness. After that, we are entering into physical elegance. Really level up, because you can't level up physically if you've not handled this internal aspects. Okay, then we talk about finances and all of that. But the point is, you want to hit that subscribe button so you don't forget this channel, and hit the bell so you'll be notified anytime we upload a new video. So today, like I said, we are talking about traumas. What are traumas? What is trauma? Emotional trauma. We've spoken about emotions. We realize they form from the mind by the thoughts and the brain, and from the heart with emotions. The both of them come together and they're psychological. So I'm going to read what I have written here and explain as usual to you. So here, emotional trauma, in my words, after, is a very severely stressful event that destroys a person's sense of security, making the person feel very helpless outside the normal type of human experiences. I hope that is self-explanatory. I had to put it in my words for you guys. So any form of events that happen to a person that is extremely severe, not the normal, oh, you meet stress here and you move from it, extremely severe cases that leaves a person feeling very helpless. It removes their sense of security and make the person feel very helpless outside the normal type of experiences. There are core elements I want you to pick in this thing I've said. First, the loss of control, because as I'm saying all these things, you begin to realize things that happen to you, and you can describe it, had these core elements and components, and you'll be like, okay, listen, there's loss of control because the individual does not have control. There's no way to stop this thing from happening. There's no way to make this pain go away. They feel there's loss of control. It's beyond the control of the victim. Then we have shattered sense of security. Security is a sense of protection. You know, when you are going through something, you look for a way to protect yourself immediately. That's the next thing, fight and flight. But in cases like this, there's no hope anywhere, no form of security, no way to stand in their defense or defend themselves. The third thing is helplessness. Overwhelming helplessness is still the same thing I'm saying. You know, no sense of security, no way up, no escape. So they have in their minds in such cases. Then disconnection from oneself and others and reality, which is what you see most cases. This is the next substitute mentally that people go through. They disconnect, either some dissociate from themselves, and when they read that part, that's when they develop mental illness, or they could withdraw from people, withdraw from reality. So now we grade these emotional traumatic events based on what we like call degree of severity. That's the language I choose to call it, but the others call it classes of the trauma. But I say degree of severity / class because you see they interchange and they just intertwine into each other. But let's go. The first one is acute trauma. From the name, you can know acute, very serious case of trauma. And it's usually, I would say in the layman way, has to deal with one event. For example, natural disaster, earthquake, accident, plane crash, car crash, motorcycle crash, any type of accident, fire accidents, anytime fall, any type of accident, physical assault, even medical emergency cases. People were not even planning that they will walk into, they will be rushed medically, maybe gone through one serious operation, and they did not sign up mentally. They were not ready for it. I had a case that was very scary, and the person said they gave the injection for numbness, right? And they gave the one not to feel the pain. The one for the numbness where they can't lift their hand and leg or speak was working, but for some reason the pain aspect was not working. So for every slicing and every operation and moving on the organs, the person felt it but could not speak, could not raise the hand or anything. You can imagine that kind of trauma. How it's unfathomable. So there's also witnessing trauma. It's also acute. Some people it didn't happen to, but some people can witness some really gory things that it affects them mentally too, like that. So the next type is complex trauma. From this one you can tell, imagine an acute trauma but the play of multiple emotional trauma in that one event. For example, childhood abuse. Childhood abuse can come in multiple forms. It can be a play of multiple, verbal, physical hitting and all of that. It could be a lot. Emotional, everything. Domestic violence again. There could be beating involved, verbal aggressiveness and all of that. Human trafficking, war, repeated bullying and harassment. These are types of complex traumas. Then we have interpersonal trauma. This is emotional abuse, physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect or abandonment, betrayal, infidelity. It's usually the trauma between an individual and one or two other persons. Do you get? So this is interpersonal trauma, and the types could be an emotional abuse, it can be physical abuse, sexual abuse, neglect, abandonment, betrayal, infidelity. You see that complex trauma can be interpersonal traumas. You get? Complex traumas, you see the way they can intertwine. So that's why we're talking degree, severity and class of traumas. Then we have collective trauma. Collective trauma, when everybody is feeling the trauma together, like historical trauma, cultural trauma and community violence. And after that, trauma can go very deep. I'm just picking the ones that are very important and will be very relatable to us, kind of. We are not therapists. We are just learning so that we can become self-aware. That sometimes we are carrying problems that actually have a name, but we don't know. So yeah, this one is very relatable. Developmental trauma. This is like during when an individual is growing up or developing something, the kind of trauma they may come in contact with. For example, childhood neglect, abandonment, parental substance abuse. Parents that use drugs or something. There are some type of abuse, neglect, could even be emotional or physical abuse that children under such environments witness or they are subjected to. Sadly, we have even children that are adopted in foster homes. There's a set of developmental trauma associated with them, and also medical trauma for children too. Then we have psychological trauma, which is anything that has play where it's messing with the person's psychology, their mental, their emotional and their thought process, their mental health. Is the combination of your emotions and your thoughts, like we learned. So things like verbal abuse can spark up negative emotions as well as negative thoughts. Gaslighting is like denying someone's reality. That's a form of manipulation. It can affect the mind of somebody, their thought process, their emotions. Emotional blackmail is another one. You see this well with parents etc. when they want to have their way, especially in Africa. Emotional blackmail is like manipulation, playing with the person's emotions and psychology to get your personal gain, denying their reality. And we have psychological bullying. Emotional blackmail can also look like psychological bullying. Bully the person's psychology, threaten them, and all of that just to get your bidding. Those are psychological trauma. Even online bullying and harassment, passive aggression. I like to put this on passive aggression. So many people are very good with passive aggression. You know, when person they are dealing with you, but you don't know they are dealing with you. They are not doing it physically, but they are playing with your emotions and your mind, like silent treatment, blah blah blah, and all of that. We have secondary trauma. These ones are like, they are not direct, you know, but they exist, such as listening trauma. You listen to people's story, that your mind starts to make imaginations and pictures of those things, and you can't begin to comprehend. Yes. So listening trauma, empathy fatigue. You start to pity somebody, feel so compassionate that you are exhausted. There's no empathy and kindness left in you. You are like, your body is physically drained, your mind cannot, is, you know. Witnessing trauma too, is, you can put it as secondary, because some people, though it may not happen to them, they were there when it was happening to somebody, some gruesome things you shouldn't even talk about, and it's ingrained in their mind, all those memories, those pictures. That's why we need to be careful the kind of things we watch online, and all this. There's the psychological aspect is having on you, but you're not even seeing it, you don't even know. Okay. So that's secondary trauma. Family and friend trauma. Maybe someone, you know, a friend or a family, that it happened to the person, you know, you can so feel it like it happened to you. So that's secondary trauma. Then we have cultural trauma, such as racism, discrimination, sexism, misogyny, homophobia, you know, all of that, disability, discrimination, institutional trauma from school, work, or government, you know. All right. About to go over trauma dimensions. We have the initial emotional response when the trauma has happened, which is fear, usually fear, shock, or denial. By the time we enter into types of trauma, like trauma abuse proper, you will be able to relate to this. So usually the initial response is always fear, shock, you know, and denial. Fear, shock, and denial. Then the second phase, we have cognitive processing, where they are processing their thoughts and their emotions, and such kind of play happens, such as this disbelief and confusion, you know. Then we have the third phase, which is psychological reaction, which is hypervigilance. They're like, wow, on the edge and always watching for the next wrong thing that will happen, and the next, when either the person that is the cause of the trauma, you know, or the event, they're always hypervigilance, watching, and with adrenaline rush, they're on the edge, such high blood pressure or something, expecting the worst as always. Then we have behavioral response as the fourth, which is either to fly, to fight, or to freeze. Then the fifth, we have social interactions. They either seek support, or in some cases they will withdraw from social interaction, depending on the abuse and the circumstances surrounding it. So now we have seen trauma impacts, trauma dimensions, and we've defined what emotional trauma are. All right. So next we are going into impact of trauma next. After the trauma dimension has been played over and over in the mind and psychology of the person, it then leads to trauma impact. When the dimension of trauma has played over and over, which are initial emotional response, cognitive processing, psychological reaction, behavioral responses, and social interaction, when it has stayed in the mind and the play and the behavior of the victim for long enough, then it births impact of trauma, where like established behavior, kind of. So you have emotional dysregulation. This is difficulty in emotional regulation. So such as anxiety, depression, irritability, they get angry any little thing, maybe when they are triggered, numbness, dissociation, that's trying to dissociate themselves from the event, impulsive behaviors, like it could be anger again, crying. It could impulsive behaviors is a lot. It could be suicidal, it could be crying, it could be sabotaging behaviors, it could be anything, Then mood swings. People that like to say, "Oh, that's just how I am. I have mood swings." Mood swings can be an indication of emotional trauma there. So there was a trigger. You don't just enter mood swings like that, darling. You see? Like I said, we're going to learn a lot. Then for the second impact of trauma, we have distorted thinking patterns, negative thinking patterns. When somebody has gone through trauma at this point, they don't even see positivity. They are just focused on the negative because their mind is familiar. They are used to this, like they've been there, done that, done this, and they can't even associate anything positive from things. Again, you said that way, you said their thinking patterns have been distorted. Negative thinking patterns, cognitive distortion. That's what's happening. For example of this, you have exaggeration. People that exaggerate a lot, over generalizing of events, assumption, jump into conclusion, focus on the negative, downplay positive, or even put it like it doesn't exist at all. Jumping into conclusions, emotional reasoning rather than logical reasoning. Once you just say something and it sounds familiar, they've dropped the hammer of judgment. Nothing is logical to them. They are just responding to that inbuilt emotions that happened as a result of that trauma. So anything that, okay, let me give you an example now. Imagine somebody that went through traumatic. We have not entered when we start talking about types of this emotional trauma, so you understand. But let me pick one, which is, let's say someone that went through emotional trauma in relationship now. The emotional dysregulation sets in for, so there's fear, anxiety about like potential new relationships. Then number two, distorted thinking. They will always have trust issues. They will expect when you do something that looks like what they maybe you do it innocently, that look like the attitude the person who caused that pain or something was doing them, then they jump into conclusion. They don't want to give any logical things, so they even sabotage, destroy the relationship, and work on you, do everything negative but not good. It's from a place of trauma. They're operating from trauma. That's the impact of trauma. All those traumatic dimensions, the play of it and everything has impacted a blueprint into their cognitive response to anything, because it's like central processing unit is stored. When you are moving in ways that seem familiar to this thing, they immediately ignite a response for you. That's just how it is. That's the impact of trauma. The third, we have impaired relationship. Of course, all this attitude and not giving people chance of, because we know everybody, they are not perfect. That's why they'll tell you that people think healthy relationship is supposed not to trigger them, but it will trigger you a lot, because I don't know, people will do things and it's not, it's actually innocently, but somehow your triggers, your wounds that trauma is speaking something familiar. For example, maybe the person that broke up went through so much trauma, but this person usually maybe don't call frequently, and this new person is actually honestly busy and they did not call for one day. You see them overreacting. All those attitudes can impair relationship. They begin to have trust issues, which impairs the relationship. There's conflict, there's aggression, fear of abandonment, like it will happen again. And this new person is like, what's going on? Why are you overreacting? I'm explaining to you, this is what actually happened. They'll be like, no, it's a lie. All men are dogs, or all women are liars. All of that, because like they're all operating from a place of the impact of the trauma they went through. Then we have the fourth coming in, physical health impacts. Yes, you can see emotional trauma can actually reflect by affecting the health of an individual physically. So for example, pain, like actual pain, people can feel heartbreak and they have pain in the heart, fatigue, high blood pressure, and when emotions are like this, it starts to trigger some bad hormones. That's what I like to call these hormones. They are the bad guys. They're in your body when they just pick it when there is stress. Your blood pressure is high, you are stressing. You are having certain emotions of sadness, fear, anxiety. Those hormones trigger immediately. And here they are. We have cortisol, adrenaline, neuropinephrine, all right, and vasopressin. So cortisol gives weight gain. It's one that makes you gain weight, have fat, belly fat. Acne can also give acne. It can give insomnia. It can lead to also indirectly affect the blood sugar level. Yes. That's why you don't play with trauma. So imagine somebody having trauma and they are taking, and they don't even know its mental health is coming from. Adrenaline can cause hypertension. It can cause anxiety, panic attacks, cardiovascular health diseases. Neuropinephrine can cause high blood pressure also, and digestive issues and anxiety agitations. Then we have vasopressin, which is supposed to be the social and bonding hormone, which can decide to make you act otherwise. Then it can even, trauma impact can go deep as spiritual. Yeah, it can go deep as spiritual and existential crisis. For example, loss of faith or spiritual connection. Some people will not believe in God anymore, have certain names to call God, feelings of abandonment, of being forsaken by the higher power, which is God or whatever they believe in, difficulty finding meaning or purpose to their life, to themselves, unforgiveness, when unforgiveness and bitterness, not agreeing to let go, falls under here too. See, it's spiritual problem. And you know, feeling, some people can feel caused, punished, and unworthy. You know, spiritual numbness altogether. That is what it is. All right. So now the sixth is behavioral pattern, because impact of trauma can come in as behavioral pattern with people. So they avoidance, they avoid places, people, or anything that can just make them remember that trauma, whether directly or indirectly. They just want to avoid anything altogether. For example, let's use relationship again. Some people say, oh, I'll never date anybody, oh, avoid having feelings for anybody, and they just treat it with avoidance because they're like, wow, no. You know, self-sabotage, yes, it goes together. They just sabotage anything good coming into their life because of what has happened before. So now we are going to enter into trauma symptoms, like symptoms of trauma, like this person is going through trauma, the symptoms usually associated. So I'm like, this sounds like something that is happening to me. Do you get? We have trauma symptoms, example, anxiety, fear, hypervigilance, like that's on the edge waiting for the next thing. Let me be very seriously watching and guarding the atmosphere. Hey, are they coming? Yes, are they, a certain guard for themselves with their sword and everything. That is hypervigilance. Depression, sadness, emotional numbness, anger, irritability, mood swings, difficulty in sleeping, that's insomnia, difficulty in concentration, avoidance behavior. Again, they could avoid people, places, or actions, or anything that just wants to look like or make them remember that traumatic event, whether it is true, it is lie, it is associated in anything, is something new, they rather just avoid. That's the way the brain has told them to protect themselves. Intrusive memories and flashbacks. When you are always having flashback of that thing, it's possible you are under trauma, you don't know. Dissociation, again, that is disconnect from emotional thoughts. Some people, that's how some people do, they just disconnect from emotional thought. Like, for example, I remember one time it was beginning of the year, sales were so low, and I was saving. I was so proud of myself. I had started the year strong, saving this amount of money. Then I saw something I really wanted to buy for my office space. Like, I wanted to invest in air conditioners and then dispensing machine, you can imagine. And I saw a page, looked very legit. The prices were like almost close to buying the new one as of that time, and I was like, oh, nice. And I sent the money and I was blocked. Normal me, that thing's supposed to shake me and everything. This was the method I used. I dissociated. I dissociated straight up. I don't know how my mind did it, but I dissociated immediately. I never mourned that event. I never did like I lost money. I never mourned it. I moved on like it was a dream. It never happened, and that is it. Just keep it moving. That's it. That's the best way that my mind saw how to handle something like that. Some people do like that in everything, but it's not healthy. In that case, it was very good because it allowed me let go. But in all cases, it's not good. If somebody dissociates and they would not really, especially from a very big event, let's say really serious cases, the mind has still imprinted it, and instead of healing, they dissociate. It's a wrong adaptation pattern. Here they dissociate and disconnect. The hurt is still there, and they will definitely deal with someone that wasn't the person that did it in the first place. They will self-sabotage in a lot of things. So it's very important to heal. You have self-blame, shame, guilt, trust issues, and all of that. Yes. So after we have gone through certain symptoms, let's go into, I hope it's time for us to go into, yes, my favorite part of this video. Types of trauma, types of emotional trauma abuse. Type of emotional trauma. Yeah, this is where we are heading to. Sit back and relax. This is the the events that can occur in a person's life to cause trauma. Good. Sit back, because I feel personally everybody you meet in this world can relate to one of these. So the first on the list, causes and types of trauma, we have childhood neglect and abandonment. Childhood neglect and abandonment. So this is a traumatic experience when a child's physical, emotional, and psychological needs are not met. So we have emotional neglect, lack of emotional support, validation, or affection. For example, I see this with parents a lot now. Lack of emotional support could look like this. A child could just come on, trying to tell you how she doesn't feel about something. Like, instead of like validating that her emotions and gently teaching her the way she should behave, they're like, hey, why are you doing like that? Is that why you're talking? And so that's it. Or or in a case in African homes, you see maybe it's the younger and the elder, like, that's your younger sister. Yes, you should do that. You should be protecting her. You are doing, that's the easy way, but you are doing a destruction to that child's this thing. There's a damage that is being done, and Satan loves to ride on this thing. It will imprint in their mind. If you do so much, you invalidate a child, they will grow up and their peers they'll be people pleasing. They'll not be able to stand up to themselves. People will take advantage of them a lot. Yes, and that is you to blame for your child. Good. That's why I was so passionate and happy we're getting in here. And then give them validate their emotions. Parents can just shout, "Stop shouting! Is that why you did your face like that?" It's very easy. You see it in African homes here, because mommy is irritated, daddy is irritated, is not in the mood, mommy is not in the mood. It's very easy for you to shut them up. You should be ashamed of yourself at your age. Say, yeah, this is what you're complaining of. Validate their feelings first before you know one thing I love about children? Communicate with them. Just communicate. It will stick. You will not even need to communicate to say that thing twice. But we are not intentional in parenting. Parents are not intentional. Anyways, support them emotionally. There's a video I saw on TikTok, and they were like, evidence that being present matters. And they came upstage, they were to sing, and every other little child were waving their mom or their dad in the crowd, and this little boy was just there looking. I think in his mind, as he was looking around, he was so sure that maybe nobody came for him. And at the middle of this thing, the mom was trying her best to wave. His eye finally caught the mom. If you see the way this child went from being and just jump. And I was like, wow, I would never in hell ever thought certain matter to children. You can see the way the boy transformed from 0 to 100. He was ready to sing. He was just jumping with his little legs. Wow, if you see that video, you'll be moved to tears. Like, support them, give affection such as hugs, rub their eyes, speak to them gently. Like, you are supposed to be a man, you are going to be this, man up yourself, see what you are crying about, Agbaya. If you're foreigner watching this, you'll not be able to relate, but this is how the normal movement in an African home or a Nigerian home. That's it. It's either parents are doing it or caregivers are even doing it, and you are doing something to that child. They are reducing. They'll grow up to have low self-esteem. They'll always shut up. They'll never be able to stand up to themselves. And you started the damages. I feel on the last day, God will tell some parents, oh yeah, come and give account. Yes, this is your son. How do you train him? People will be very surprised. Now, from that is emotional neglect and abandonment. Now let's enter into physical neglect and abandonment, still under childhood neglect and abandonment. We just finished talking about emotional. Now let's enter into the physical aspect of it. Food, water, shelter. Children don't have food, water, and shelter. That can causes trauma. That causes trauma. Sometimes it's not the parents' fault. They don't have good living condition. It affects children. It affects them. It affects them a lot. In fact, I even expand this one, because when I was a child, I remember then, going to church and all of that. I would see all those my age group with their fancy boots and everything, and their ball gowns and their purses, all the best. Though you just wear your old dirty clothes with your slippers, and you just be looking, always be admiring their shoe. If you touch it, you'll be like a dirt that want to stain it. All those things have the effect. It lives in a child's mind. And you see people grow up, they finally have money to do certain things, they're overdoing it. I don't know, it can come in different form or shape in adults when they grow up. Now we have psychological neglect. This physical neglect, again, you see some women that, okay, maybe they did, as a child, they associated them not having that amenities because their father walked out or their mother was doing something, like, no man can tell me anything. All those things, we think they are subtle. There is something that is doing to a child's mind. Then let's enter into the psychological aspect of this child abandonment and neglect. Lack of guidance. Some parents are too busy to even guide their children, or they are spoiling them. And this is where Saka Denford, where they say narcissists arise from. I don't know how that is possible. I need to still go deep into that one, because you think narcissism supposed to have parents that were really bad to them or something like that. But funny enough, it stems from no guidance, no supervision, or boundaries. This boundary own is like people that spoil children, that just make them the alpha and omega and everything. So learn to give guidance, supervision, and boundaries, so that you are feeding their psychology, their cognitive reasoning. You are developing moral emotions and morals in them. So this is still a type of neglect. So now let's enter abandonment, still under childhood neglect and abandonment. Abandonment can be physical, emotionally, or absent father, like in absent father and mothers. It can be physical absent, emotional absent, either absent father, absent mother, absent, So yeah, that's abandonment. They are not physically present, and sometimes they can be physically present, but they are just parents' figure. Maybe they are chasing their career. When they come home, the baby is sleeping, the child is already sleeping, and the child grows. Parents can be present but absent. Do you know? They just, daddy, mommy. The real person they connect to emotionally are caregivers, their peer groups, and people around. They don't know what mom is. It's just a word. They don't know what dad is. It's just a word, because dad is always busy. I'm busy. Later. I say, when I'm talking to people, don't talk to me back. Yeah, you can be there and very absent. So now, the impact of this behavior in children, you can see low self-esteem, trust issues, self-sabotaging behavior, suicidal self. I was shocked. Emotional dysregulation. That is like, you see all these children that throw tantrums and shake their leg, and lack of psychological guidance, anxiety. Even dogs have anxiety, not to talk of children. Depression, difficulty forming intimate relationships when they grow older. True. Now, that is childhood neglect and abandonment. You know why I'm happy? We are also going to, after we finish talking about emotional trauma, the next topic is emotional wounds. You will see how trauma metamorphoses into emotional wounds. Like this one now, when the child grows up, you will see the, okay, let me give you small expo so that you make sure you subscribe and you make sure to be here to see when we are talking about the next, which is the, so for childhood neglect and abandonment, the resulting wound, emotional wound when they've grown into adults, is fear of abandonment. Yes, because there was neglect, the parents were not there at the beginning. So when the child grows up, I'm just giving you a small expo now, this is supposed to be next week talk. When the child grows up, there's the fear of abandonment because they feel every other person would leave. Right? They feel every other person will leave. So the behavioral pattern you see with them is people pleasing. Get scared? People pleasing. They get into relationship, they want to over please. These are the people you see in places that they are beating them, blowing their head, and you be asking, why is the way they still there? Why have she not left? Why is he still? You can't understand it. It's familiar. Their trauma bonding, it's very familiar. Their inner child is wanting to get this. What their inner child is saying is that daddy and mom that was not there, they want to do everything to get the approval of this person in their subconscious because it's imprinted. They don't know. This is distorted cognitive patterns. You understand when we're talking about the impacts and dimension? The senses is not reasoning the way it's supposed to reason now. It's moving with trauma. So that's one secret I brought to you. If you want to know others, maybe you make sure to keep a date, so when we are for the next video talking about emotional wounds. So that's how this emotional trauma now metamorphoses into emotional wounds, and the behavioral pattern you can see to catch them and say, this one have daddy issues, this one have mommy issues. So yeah, now let's continue talking about the types of emotional trauma. You keep a date for our next this thing. Hit the bell. Okay, the next type of trauma is emotional and physical abuse. Physical and emotional abuse. So let's start with the emotional abuse. Example: yelling. And the song is yelling, angrily banging and yelling, name calling, gaslighting. Now, this emotional and physical abuse can take place in childhood trauma too, and in some cases it could be adults in relationships. Adults in relationship. As an adult, you can come in contact with emotional and physical abuse that would lead to traumatic experiences. That and like yelling, name calling. Some people say they are in relationships that they are calling them, you're a dull brain, you're ugly, you can never amount to anything, you don't do anything right, and they'll be in those places. Yeah, this is emotional abuse. Gaslighting is a form of emotional abuse. Some of you don't know, but you say because you're dating somebody and she's cool, calm and collected. Oh, he was cool, calm and collected. When anytime there's an issue and you're like, I don't like when you do this, and the person is denying your reality, whether subtly or any words, they're denying your reality. You're like, but this happened when you're bringing it between us, and the person says, no, that's not the way it happened. And even if it happened like that, you're probably overreacting. And even if you're not probably overreacting, it is you that made me behave like that. It is always about you. So the person is denying your reality. These are subtle cases of emotional manipulation. That is how you know you're in a toxic environment. Then we have emotional blackmail. There usually even this emotional abuse too, even adult children, parents could do it to their children, siblings could do it to themselves, friends could do it to themselves, relationship people can do it to themselves, spouses can do it to themselves. Emotional blackmail too is like using manipulation to get what you want from that person every time. Just emotionally blackmail, by making them feel ashamed or guilty. Even parents can do it to their children. Imagine, let's talk about the first daughter or first child syndrome, where the certain parents have the mindset that their children are their retirement plan, for example, and you put certain pressure, always squeeze them and make sure they don't even care. They just want to get their will, or you want them to get married to somebody. They just want them to do a certain will. The parents want them to do a particular will. It's out of selfishness. They will employ emotional blackmail. After what I've done for you, ungrateful child, you sat in this stomach for how many times? Parents could do this. It could also come in the form of relationships, and the partner is or spouse is emotionally blackmailing the other person. It could come in ways. Imagine, for example, I had when a woman gives birth, down there is always very raw and it's painful. There's even bottles they use because you can't even wash that part, so you have to use that bottle. What's the name? Is it perennial, whatever? And they say they should not even be physically engaged with their spouse. Imagine a spouse being married to a wicked man that doesn't understand all these things, and he just starts saying, you are doing it purposely. Don't you know all these 9 months that I've been you don't know I've been holding my body. What if I go and cheat on you? If I go out and sleep out there, no, it is your fault. That woman will now feel, oh wow, she, it's easy to blackmail her like that. You just use their way with words. After all I've done for you, and the person will just okay, and he does that even when the wife is in pain, and that's trauma. You get? That's trauma, emotional trauma. Like I said, relationships too. When people that are in relationship with narcissists, a narcissist feed off the energy of other people, because a narcissist has a deep-seated emotional trauma of insecurity. They will see where that one can come from, and they feed off on people's energy. They have this dissociative mentality where they have dissociated themselves from reality, and they form this false this godlike trophy, this thing of themselves, and the way they try to reinforce it is to catch a host and feed off that person's energy, talk down on them, destroy their destiny, tell them how, so that they can look very good and important. Yes. So relationships can be like that. That is emotional abuse. I'm just telling you, emotional abuse can come in relationship, parenting, spouses, marriage, in many ways. And it can cause isolation. They can isolate the person, not be talking to you, not be calling. Imagine in parents, this and some mothers will even do that because they didn't get their way with their child. They will treat all the other ones well, so this one will feel isolated. That's passive aggression. In friend group safe, the one that is not doing the bidding, they'll just lay that one, and everybody will isolate the person. Emotional, the person will feel left out. Good. Then denying abuse, which is gaslighting, minimize your reality, minimize your character, make you feel smaller than you are with words and everything, talk down on the person repeatedly. We have economic abuse too, and psychological manipulation. It's the same thing. It's everything I just finished talking about. Now let's enter into physical abuse. We know this is hitting, slapping, pushing, kicking, punching, choking. Even sexual abuse fall under this one too. Physical restraints, threats, destruction of properties, and neglect. These are forms of physical abuse. All right. So the impact to this thing that we can see, it causes injury, fear, hypervigilance again, hypervigilance, avoidance behavior, physical tension, numbness, and sleeplessness. The waking up in the night and saying, there's a circle associated with emotional and physical abuse. Wherever you see any emotional and physical abuse, circles are always there. You can't find circles in childhood neglect, but you can find circles here. And usually there's tension building, there's fear, and then the explosive or abusive incident occurs. Then there's reconciliation, or something we like to call the honeymoon phase, because the abuser will always have a way to create balance where there's peace. Finally, imagine, like, an abusive father can come in this context. That what the honeymoon phase can look like, maybe when they're acting normal, like they were just not behaving like witches and wizards 2 weeks ago, a day ago, some minutes ago, and repeat is the next. So it's a cycle. It continues. Why there are victims will always stay in these places, like I told you. That's why I'm like, why didn't you leave? Children stuck with parents, people stuck in love relationship, people stuck in marriages, people stuck in places. Why? Because the victim's mentality and the trauma and the abuse always deplete fear, love, loyalty, shame and guilt, economic dependence, like children and parents, for example now, and social isolation, lack of support. When there's no support, no help anywhere, they'll just resign to their fate. That's why they stay in those places. Fear, what if I go? What with this? Maybe societal fear, whatever fear. Now let's go to third. So we have handled 2 types of emotional trauma and abuse. Next, let's go into rejection. Rejection trauma, or rejection wound of rejection. Rejection. Rejection as a trauma. Let's talk about it. Okay. It can either be social, emotional, physical, or self-rejection. Now let's look into social rejection. Imagine friendship. Rejection, right? When you feel rejected, every way feeling rejected, either by people's behavior, or their words, or their neglect. It's still rejection. Can still give rejection, neglect, not needed, not wanted. Okay. So we have social rejection, friendships and relationships. I even think family can be here too, because some people that get some children out of rape or wedlock, or it makes them remember the spouse they hate. They reject the child a lot, mentally, physically, everywhere. But here we have friendship and relationship. Friend groups. People just put their identity in other people so much. Again, maybe these people please us again, that were abandoned during. I kind of feel childhood abandonment and neglect goes hand in hand with rejection. Is my personal belief. So, and relationship. If somebody went to a relationship, they wanted this person to them. The person was the end of your person, and they were like loving, and the person rejected them. Jesus. That is a rejection wound has happened because they gave their all in this relationship. Do you get it? And this person was playing them for a fool. Rejection trauma is birthed. Now we have emotional rejection, dismissing people's feelings and their needs emotionally. That's also dismissing feelings and needs. Yeah. For example, this is when lack of empathy. Let's say, for example, I'm in a relationship with somebody, and I'm feeling a type of not feeling myself, not feeling motivated about life, about business and things. And I'll go to the partner to expect them to support you and say some things. They will dismiss your feelings, it's almost like dismissing your reality. You don't have that thing. There is and some of them will even do it in so subtle ways you would not know. I have a friend, I don't know, so far I'm not calling her name, so I'm not putting her business out here, and it looked something like this, because as I'm looking at this, I'm remembering her. She's coming to my mind, where when she was facing serious office issues. Do you know what it is to be in all these like financial serious companies and businesses, and you're facing office issue that you wake up every morning and go to? The next place to succor is to go to her person, and I'll be like, this is what this person is doing. Do you know what this guy used to be to console her? Like, if women even don't want to vent, it would like shut it up immediately and be like, is that why? Because of this? Is this what is worrying you? It's not. It doesn't reach now. Is it because of it? Just and you go and buy fish and bring it for her. Then tomorrow she'll dress up and go and meet. It can look like that. like, and also the example I gave of, imagine a child crying, the elder child crying because our younger sister collected her this thing, and in African homes they'll dismiss her feelings and be like, that's your younger sister, you should share, you're not buyer for thinking like that and all that. It can look like that too. Then we have physical rejection, which is neglect basically. Then we have self-rejection. When a person reject themselves by themselves, I feel this kind of people, you see it with when they have gone through so much emotional abuse, physical emotional abuse, and they just have self-doubt, low self-esteem. Low self-esteem and self-doubt is a form of self-rejection, and you can have trauma from it, yes, but because you are repeatedly doing it, so the dimensions and the impact are, you know, coming into play. Scenario, it comes in scenarios like past relationships, like I say, bullying and peer pressure, traumatic events, abuse and loss, chronic criticism and dismissal. You know, that's like chronic criticism. Criticism can come under emotional rejection too. When you criticize somebody, they feel rejected emotionally and they carry that wound. Imagine children growing up that the parents always criticize every single thing they do. They don't always feel good enough. Everything is wrong. They are and you know, that fear self will even make them to be failing in school and even be doing wrong things, that they cannot please you, because there's that pressure to please you and that they feel they are not good enough, and they grow into it into adulthood. And when other people trigger that wound, hey, you see this emotional dysregulation. They can come at you with anger, aggressiveness, and you'll be wondering, is it this small thing I did? You triggered a wound. So yeah, that's under rejection. There's emotional rejection. That's under emotional rejection. You understand it, yeah? Criticism and dismissal. You dismiss their feelings. You dismiss their feelings. You should not be feeling like that. You're a man. You should not be feeling like that. You are the eldest. You should not be feeling like that. You dismiss it. You not validate their feelings. It has the damage, you know. And in relationship too, this parents can do this, relationship people can do it, spouses can do it. There is trauma going on. Next, the emotional responses to this thing is guilt and shame. The person will usually feel so ashamed of themselves. There's great guilt and shame associated with it. You know, name it. Is it the one that friends do? There's great guilt and shame. There's self-doubt, anxiety, fear of abandonment. That's what I was telling you. Depression, isolation, anger, resentment, low self-esteem, lack of confidence. Now let's enter into the fourth type of emotional trauma. Yes, loss and grief. Death of a loved one, end of a relationship, health changes, major life transitions, even pet loss can be associated with when you lose something and they need to grieve it. Yeah, so it has stages. There's the denial stage. This cannot be true. Then there's the anger, there's bargaining, there's depression, then there's acceptance. And now bear it in mind that it's not always linear to the healing, to the acceptance, to the healing, because person can go pass through denial, anger, bargaining, and come back to denial later again, maybe fly to bargaining, enter depression, come out of it, enter anger. They can just go like that, even enter acceptance and fly back to denial again. It's not linear. The healing is not always linear here. When there's a loss and grief, something to be mourned, it could be death of a loved one, end of a relationship, health challenges, major life transitions, new job, from grass to grace things, and loss of pets. Emotions that are involved in play here, usually sadness, sorrow, shock, numbness, guilt and regret, anxiety and fear, and relief in some cases. You know, can be sad that you lose something, sorrowful that you lose something, shocked that you can lose this thing, and numbness, not wanting to feel emotion, that's dissociation. Guilt and regret. Oh, why did I even associate myself with that person? Oh, why did I give my all in that business, to that company? You know, and maybe in a case where they lost that thing because of something they feel they didn't do well, their action or inaction, they feel guilty. Then there's anxiety and fear of the future, possibly, and relief. In some cases they may get their closure. Then we have the fifth emotional trauma type, bullying. Repeated intentional behavior, having others causing emotional distress to another person. Types, we have verbal bullying, physical bullying, relational bullying, and cyber bullying. Right? So for verbal bullying, we have teasing and name calling. Teasing the person, insult them, yap them, anyone, teasing somebody, calling them names either by their body or whatever, but just teasing and calling somebody. Physical bullying, hitting, pushing, beating, scratching, causing physical harm to the person. Then we have relational, which is social exclusion or spreading rumors. You can exclude somebody. Oh yeah, I faced this one when I was in school because my dad was in a state that is not our tribe, and they were like, oh, that girl, she's not the tribe of us. They'll go lose my hair then. And I was so small and little, they will gather all of them in one accord, lose my hair. They were really bullying. Why? Because I don't look like them. Jealousy. Little children were in nursery too. I still remember that a lot until I dealt with one. They left me alone. So social exclusion, they'll just exclude you. People can do that because they feel you are poor. People can do that as racism too. Spreading rumors. Some people can just hate some people and just spread rumors to destroy it and tarnish their image, so they'll have guilt and shame. We have cyberbullying. We know this one. You pick someone online and be harassing the person. You see video, you be like picking on the person, picking on their picture and everything. Like, that is cyberbullying. You go trolls, you go and comment under somebody's this. You're a bully, a cyberbully. That's what you are. Okay. So the emotional impact again, when people go through loss and grief, right? When people go through loss and grief, when people go through bullying, we have entered bully, I'm sorry. The emotional impact they feel is hypervigilance again. They're like, their walls are up, they're checking, they're scared. Fear, avoidance, and escapism. They're trying to escape anything that would lead to they're being bullied. Dissociation and detachment again. Shame and self-blame. Anger and aggression. So effects of these impacts, you can have PTSD, that is post-traumatic stress disorder. I know you know PTSD. All these things give PTSD. They are the physical manifestation of like, ooh, I'm reacting to my triggers, my trauma. Anxiety, depression, suicidal thoughts and behaviors are very, very, very key with people that are being bullied, because they feel helpless and little, like they are insignificant. So they are like, why exist? They just feel nobody can do anything. A lot of verbal damage has been done and physical damage that they do not see themselves worthy of anything. They feel themselves worthless. They've been violated so much, they don't feel they worth anything. Good. Social withdrawal and isolation, you also see them with them before they enter into the suicidal part. Then we have the sixth type of emotional trauma, which is betrayal. Betrayal. Violation of trust, loyalty, and confidentiality, causing emotional harm. It can be intentional or non-intentional. So we have types. Of course, we have types. We have interpersonal betrayal, such as infidelity, deception. When you hear interpersonal, that means between someone and another person or group of persons, or one or two persons. So infidelity, deception, which one again? Then we have institutional betrayal, abuse of power and corruption, wrong government, even in school. Then we have self-betrayal, the one that you betray yourself, which is compromising your values, or self-sabotage. You sabotage yourself. You everything you do to prevent yourself from good thing because you feel you don't deserve it. That is self-sabotage and it's self-betrayal. because when you have passed that phase, you'll be so angry with yourself, so disappointed with yourself, you know. Then we have historical betrayal, which is ancestral trauma and cultural oppression. This is ancestral trauma and cultural oppression, which is historical betrayal. Yeah. Emotional responses. We have, when it comes to betrayal, we have flow chart of emotional responses, and we have up to 5 different types that can occur. The first set is shock, denial, and numbness. We have anger, resentment, and bitterness. You know, it can even be the same type of betrayal, but an individual will choose to respond to any of this. Imagine the case that I told you, I transferred money to somebody for ACs and CWAs, and they blocked me and took my money. The person betrayed my trust. That's interpersonal. You know, my reaction was shock, denial, and numbness. That was definitely how my brain associated it with, and I moved from it. Another person, it could be, for them, anger, resentment, and bitterness. Another person, it could be sadness, grief, and despair. Another person, it could be fear, anxiety. Fear, anxiety, and hypervigilance can come for another person, and they'll be like, I'll never buy anything from any vendor online. All vendors are evil. They'll be hypervigilant. Another person, shame, guilt, and self-doubt. You know, because the person could be, wow, I'm so ashamed of myself, I can fall prey to this kind of thing. Wow, deep guilt, then self-doubt. Like, the person will think they are dumb, but it's not me. And have self-distance, self-conscious emotion issues. Results of this impact: trust issues, intrusive memories and flashbacks, avoidance and triggers of reminders, self-destructive behavior, and emotional dysregulation. When you hear emotional dysregulation, what do I say? Anger, throat tantrums, you know, and all of that. The 7th type of emotional trauma is sexual trauma. This is non-consensual sexual experiences or manipulation or pressure acting against the will of another person. Act against their will. It affects individual physically, emotionally, and psychologically. Types of sexual trauma. We have childhood sexual abuse, rape or attempted rape, sexual assault or battery, incest, human trafficking, sexual harassment, and exploitation. Effects of all of this can be PTSD. There's a PTSD, post-traumatic stress disorder, which are the symptoms of anxiety and depression, dissociating and numbness again, shame and guilt. But I always see it with people that have gone through sexual emotional trauma. They always have shame and guilt, always suffer from shame and guilt, you know. And most of them, you see them being sexual perversion comes in, they sleep around in their adult stage. Go and look for anybody that went through this thing. They have the tendency most times to sleep around because there's shame. They don't feel, there's no sense of dignity and worth. That's why they do that. Low self-esteem, low self-worth, I said it. Difficulty with this will affect most times difficulty in intimacy when they've gone to adults and are ready to get into relationship. Physical symptoms too, like pain and insomnia, lack of sleep. So the emotions that dwell so much with them is fear, anxiety, anger, sadness, grief, shame, self-blame, disconnection, and despair. The 8th type of emotional trauma we have is witnessing trauma. Witnessing trauma, to witness something. So the person witnessed a traumatic event. It's a type of trauma. The person too will be traumatized. Types are direct witnessing, seeing it live. Seeing violence or abuse can also give the person who witnessed it emotional trauma, even though they were not the one that it happened to. Another type is indirect witnessing. That's hearing it or watching the video. It can traumatize a person. I remember the first time I watched when they were all this insurgency that they caught a man and they beheaded him. I don't even know. When you start looking at that video, you can't stop. I was not myself for weeks. I was not myself for weeks. I don't know. I was numb and dissociated, and I had so much hate in my heart to, I don't know, but it's a form of trauma too. There is direct witnessing, yeah, and indirect hearing it, like I said, and there's vicarious trauma, empathizing with the experience. Empathizing with the experience, too much empathy, it can wear you out emotionally, and make you exhausted. Then we have effects, which is emotional distress. We have secondary trauma stress. We have compassion fatigue. We have hyperarousal, that is insomnia, and hypervigilance and avoidance. These are the effects. You know, the person, you'll be afraid, oh, I'm making up things in the head, you know, distress, emotional distress. Now, symptoms: memories, flashback, intrusive thoughts again. Now, wow, can this happen to me? What if this can happen to this, then it can happen to you, know? Just like I told you, you know, difficulty sleeping and concentrating, of course, mood changes, hypervigilance, and dissociation. So protect your eye gates, your ear gates. You see, protect what you hear, protect how much sympathy. It's good to sympathize, but it can also traumatize you, so protect yourself. Those are all. See, traumas, they are still discovering new types, and they can interchange into themselves. You see how complex it can be, but these are the 8 I see. Everybody can relate to, everybody can understand it very well, and we can work with this. So that is all for emotional traumas. Next, we'll be entering into emotional wounds. We'll also be entering into maladaptive coping mechanism, how to recognize that it's like I have trauma. If you stay long with me, we'll also move from there, enter how to heal traumas. You see how to heal it. What do we use to heal it? Which is usually emotional intelligence and emotional maturity, which are the ones that what they call them, therapists learn about. Why they'll say go to therapy, that's what they use to help. But there's a spiritual part of emotional trauma nobody speaks about, because I asked AI and I check, and they're like, most cases therapy is not enough. They just teach you a way to handle it. For everything you see, there's the spiritual impact of it. And so here we are going to join spiritual intelligence and spiritual maturity, and when you put those 4 things together, to hell with any trauma and where they are coming from. So you want to subscribe to this channel, hit the bell, like, notification. We have so much we are going to learn here. We are going to be healing traumas, handling it emotionally, and then handling it spiritually from the root, so that you get rid of it once and for all, so that you crush it in the head, and it doesn't steal from you all that it has been stealing from you. Okay, so our next is emotional wounds, where we talk about emotional wounds. You see how this emotional traumas metamorphose into emotional wounds, and how to see the coping mechanism it uses, you know, how to identify it. Yes, and thank you guys so much for watching till this end. Hit the like button if you like this video. It's going to help these videos reach the right people. Subscribe to the channel and hit the bell, like, notification, so you would be notified when we upload emotional wounds video. Drop your comments if you have any questions. I'll be so happy to answer them, and until next time.